So today we're going to look at what it may take organizationally to develop a SWAT medic program, or add the tactical emergency medical services element to an already existing tactical team. This is not how to be a SWAT medic or the specifics of that role in your tactical team, but more of how do we evaluate organizationally how we can accomplish this in the most effective manner for our current tactical team. So what I'm going to share with you today is concepts I believe will work for the smallest of organizations up through the largest of organizations. I think the concepts in general of the process and the steps to evaluate a tactical emergency medical services element or a SWAT medic to your organization is fitting for any and all organizations, no matter of size. So where does tactical medicine or the concept of a SWAT medic or a tactical emergency medical services unit come from? Interestingly enough, the philosophy of having that individual person, that their skill is to bring care to the injured, goes way back into the 1500s. The king or the ruler or the hierarchy of a small colony or a city would in general carry someone with them that was their protector in the event that they had a medical emergency. So that theory has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. We have seen the tactical medicine or tactical medic approach really expand more from the military side as these individuals were trained both in medicine as well as tactics to address those medical elements or those medical injuries that can occur from combat, from battle. So we are looking at that more as a part of our reality that we have seen expand with our law enforcement units, as well as some of the more current concepts that are coming with this active shooter or active threat type of scenarios where we're training individuals even more specifically at that first responder level. So what is tactical medicine, or what is SWAT medic? SWAT medics or tactical medics are individuals who are trained or have a skill set in that advanced medical treatment. They also have some tactical training potentially, and more importantly, they are a part of that functional unit. Whether that functional unit is a SWAT team, or whether that's a military infantry team, or whether that's a specialized military group, those individuals have that unique medical training to be able to intervene with their teammates primarily, as well as those people who have been affected by that combat. So tactical medicine can often be confused as, or misunderstood as, treatment under fire. And while that has been the case in the military environment for many years, in today's civilian world, it isn't as much medical care under fire, under gunfire or that assault, but it's more medical treatment in a hot zone, in an area that has been engaged by an active threat or has been exposed to a larger threat. It is not the under fire as can be interpreted at times. So you may think, why do we even need a SWAT medic? I've got an ambulance staged 10 minutes down the road. Well, the ambulance staged 10 minutes down the road could be hours by the time the scene is secured for them to come in and get those injured patients or injured people. Whereas a SWAT medic can engage because they're in that hot zone environment immediately. Another critical element that a SWAT medic brings to a tactical team is their mission focus of organizing and collecting those who have been injured in a very narrow time frame. You may ask yourself, can we truly afford to have a tactical medic? Can we afford the overtime, the training, the equipment? But I would challenge you to evaluate, can we afford not to have a tactical medic? With the data that we have seen in recent engagements in that narrow time frame, that narrow window to truly affect the outcome of those that have been injured, can you truly not afford to have that tactical medic? Statistics show us that about 50% of tactical teams have medics that are specific attached to their team, And as a recent study of 2018, early this year, it's shown that they expect that to increase by another 25%. So the potential to add up to 75% of tactical teams having that designated medic focus on their team. In that same discussion, that same evaluation of the 50% of current tactical teams having that specific tactical medic position, they challenged the fact that not having that designated medical position on your tactical team could potentially put you in a position of liability because of its recognized value to the team as a whole. Knowing what we do now about these active threat situations and that they are on the increase, we see that almost weekly on our local news and media. I think for an executive level team, fire chief, police chief, to not consider that specific medical element to their tactical team, I think is a strong potential for the public to outcry as to knowing what we know about that need of that immediate medical intervention and not addressing that as part of that tactical unit. Do you want to be the chief that has the conversation with his city council as to why somebody died because you didn't have a tactical medic? So what do we do first? As with any change or any new philosophy in an organization, we need to gather our stakeholders and those people that have that interest or that vested interest in this change or this addition to us organizationally. So who are these stakeholders? The obvious would be your police department, your sheriff's department, fire department, maybe your local EMS agency that has the transporting contract for your area. But some others to consider that you may not have thought of would be your labor group, both for the fire department as well as the police department, and potentially the labor group that covers your local EMS agency. City administration being your city commissioners or your county commissioners or city council. Having those vested interests at the table to have the discussion to start this program is going to be vital in the success of it moving forward. And most importantly, the one element that must happen, must be a part of a successful tactical medic or SWAT medic program is you have to have a dedicated medical advisor to write protocols and oversee your treatment as a SWAT medic on your tactical team. So talking about a specific medical director, a medical advisor, where do you find this type of individual? Some organizations, some communities have members of their public that have or current medical doctors that have had military experience. They come from treatment in the field of being in combat. Others have medical doctors that are very interested in overseeing this specific piece of their community and that treatment protocol. So finding this individual is something you're going to have to reach out for or express this globally, maybe through your health department or through your local EMS agencies or your local EMS community meetings. This is a program that we're looking to start, and in order for us to do this, we need a medical director or someone who is interested from the medical field to oversee our policy program and protocols for this individual. So ultimately, what are we looking for from our stakeholder group? When we identify who those stakeholders are in our community, in our public service agencies, when we sit down at the table, it's not just to have a discussion about our thoughts and philosophy. It's about outlining, here's what we intend to do. Here's the individual or what that position looks like for us organizationally. And what I need from you, each one of you stakeholders, is I need your commitment. I need it verbally. I need it on paper that we commit to moving forward with this together because we see this as a valuable asset to our community and their welfare. So how do we start this process? First, for this example, let's talk about a city police department and a city fire department working collectively to create this SWAT medic position. So those stakeholder groups being the police chief, the fire chief, the SWAT commander or the leader of the SWAT team, the labor group representative from the police department, and the labor group representative from the fire department. Administratively, they need to discuss and come to an agreement on what this position is. The job description, if you will, what their roles will be, the specifics of their roles. Will they be armed? Will they not be armed? Will they be a part of the entry team, or will they be in a remote area ready to respond? All of those specifics. Who is going to cover the SWAT medic with liability or the legal coverage? Will it be the fire labor group, or will it be the police labor group? If you're a city police department and a city fire department, does the city accept that this is an interoperability that they are going to cover, that they're going to support? Additionally, what command structure are they going to fall under? Are they going to fall under the command and oversight of the SWAT team as a whole? Do they report to the SWAT commander? Do they report and act in the command or chain of command of the SWAT team and their operational outline? Or are they a part of the fire department structure and they report to the fire department chain of command, whether that's the chief or the battalion chief or the operations chief? And as mentioned, the other administrative piece that is critical for this team element, this SWAT medic position to be functional, is that dedicated medical director. Someone who agrees to oversee the specific medical protocols and function of that tactical medic. This individual would ultimately be someone who is extremely familiar with the tactical environment, familiar with a SWAT team, is able to come and train with and understand how that SWAT team will ultimately operate, as well as the roles, responsibilities, and function of that tactical medic specifically. Additionally, we need to evaluate how many SWAT medics do we need or do we want as a part of this team. Are they going to be an operator on SWAT, meaning are they going to be a tactically trained medic in an element of the entry team, or are they going to be specifically a medic with the primary mission focus of that medical treatment? Therefore, they will be in a remote location. And what I mean by remote is still within the hot zone, but potentially in the armored vehicle, or they're going to be just outside the entry point, in a position to move forward and medically engage, but not so remote as in a 10-minute response time from the local ambulance. That is a critical element to have the discussion about what role, what is the function going to be of this medic position. Usually, in most tactical teams, the medic is a team member of the SWAT team. They are not an addition to or a element of, they are a member of the SWAT team. And in that structure, they fall underneath of the SWAT command, or the law enforcement command, if you will. So yes, you can see that the time that it takes to invest in this process will be significant. You can expect up to a year in the planning process, meeting with your stakeholders and starting to outline job description, roles and responsibilities, how that's going to functionally unfold for your tactical team. There are several resources available to help pull some of these specific administrative elements or operational elements together to compare and contrast what your tactical team does amongst other tactical teams, and how that medic position specifically will fit or play a role of your tactical team. The National Tactical Officers Association has a TEMS element to it that they do with their training and education. The National Registry of Emergency Medical Technicians also has some tactical elements and some tactical training that they kind of unfold. TECC or TCCC are also other tactically specific elements to the medic position. There are other resources available that specific military units have discussed or shared how their medical role or that medical element in their team has been a function or a primary function, or how they've increased that or specified that role. So there's a significant amount of resources out there and at your availability if you choose to look further. So let's break this down just a little bit as far as the process. The MOUs, as far as your role and responsibility, where the labor group fits into that discussion. Those are going to be very individualized to the organization and those specific stakeholder groups that you have as a part of your organization. Beyond that, let's talk a little bit about the job description specifically. Now, there's two schools of thought, if you will, two philosophies behind that SWAT medic role. One of those is law enforcement first, medical second. The second is medical first, law enforcement second. And let me explain what that means. So do you take a current SWAT operator and train them as a paramedic? Now, some of the things to consider with that, the mission focus. Mission of law enforcement is that of that tactical role. Their mind, their approach, their philosophy is on what it tactically takes to address this situation. Whereas a medic first mindset, if you will, is how do I address the medical needs for my team, for the injured, and then tactical on the backside of that. So they are a functional role in that tactical team. To train a law enforcement officer in a paramedic skill set, you're looking at about 1,000 hours of didactic, of in-school room training, in addition to the time out in the field running your clinical calls, as well as your time in your operating rooms, your emergency rooms, the specifics to accomplish that paramedic level certification. On the vice of that, or the other side of that, is your paramedic-minded individual first to get law enforcement training. Now, not to take away from the specifics, that both of those trainings are highly, highly important, and just because you get a certificate or a credential or a certification in one skill set or the other does not mean that you are a professional or a skilled tactician. But to become, as a medic, to become law enforcement qualified, you can take a reserve law enforcement officer academy that some states offer. It's about 8 to 10 weeks depending on the school. Or there are state academies that can run from 16 to 18 weeks depending on your state's requirement for that law enforcement role. So from the standpoint of the job description, it depends on what the ability for the individual to commit to. Can you commit a law enforcement officer to those 1,000 hours, a year plus time in training? And a lot of states require you to have a 2-year degree to some degree in order to be a paramedic. So can you commit your law enforcement officers to that training and that education? Or does it make the most sense to partner with your fire department or your local EMS response agency to bring their skill set into your tactical team? So let's expand a little bit more on the specific role of a SWAT medic. Do you want, and is your executive team comfortable with a SWAT medic who is tactical? Meaning, are you a part of the entry stack? Or is the organization and those responsible comfortable with a SWAT medic that is primarily medically focused and therefore more in a rear position, not a part of that entry unit? So I can already tell the first question that comes up with, are they a part of the entry team or not? Or are they a part of more rear protected environment is, are they armed or are they not armed? And again, there's two philosophies of thought here. Most SWAT medics are armed with a minimum of a sidearm for the purpose of defensive measures only, because they are in that hot zone. They are in that active threat potential environment, in that role or in that real estate with their tactical team. The other is they are a fully armed operator as a part of that entry-level team. And both of those require very different levels of skill set, training, education, and the creation and the unfolding of the mindset to not get some of that mission creep of medic tactical or tactical medic, and allow that to kind of unfold and be a natural progression for the individual, whether they are armed or they're not armed. So that poses the question right away. Are your medics armed with a long gun for an entry team? Are they armed with a sidearm for defensive purposes? Or are they not armed at all? So to be a fully armed SWAT medic, you would need to be law enforcement certified in order to act in that capacity. To be sidearm equipped for defensive purposes only, that fits in your role as a tactical medic, and therefore the legal parameters are different than as an armed operator. Non-armed still allows the medic to be in that hot zone or warm zone versus the cold zone, whereas a lot of our transporting EMS or fire departments will stage until the scene is clear. So there are pros and cons to being a fully armed operator. It allows you to make entry with your team, be closer to the immediate threat potentially. However, that does require an extensive amount of training and interoperability with your team to create that comfort for you to operate at that capacity. There's also pros and cons to being armed with a sidearm for the purpose of defensive protection. It still gives you a weapon in the event that the scene creates the threat outside of that immediate protection of the entry team. It also allows you to be closer to that hot zone. The cons, however, are it keeps you in that rear position. It does not allow you to be a part of that entry-level team based on the fact you're not equipped in the same manner. Pros and cons of being an unarmed SWAT medic. The pros, you still train with your team. You still are familiar with their function and operation, their weapons, how to render them safe. You also don't have the same liability as being an armed SWAT medic. The cons, again, you could be outside of that hot zone. That may put you in the warm zone. Some organizations may want you completely out of the warm zone and in a safer environment outside of the immediate scene environment. Now let's talk about paramedic versus EMT. A lot of law enforcement agencies have EMTs already as a part of their patrol force. Now, the injuries sustained in an active threat situation, penetrating injuries, massive hemorrhage, those skill sets can be treated by an EMT, the massive hemorrhage. However, the tension pneumothorax, cricothyrotomy, those specific skills are paramedic level only. Also, volume replacement. While that's much lower down your treatment protocol, volume replacement, again, is a paramedic level skill set. So from that standpoint and what we know about active threat injuries, paramedic level skill set is the preferred on most tactical medics or tactical teams based on purely the fact that they have the skill set, training, and education to treat those injuries. So one of the most critical elements of the SWAT medic process is defining who will be your protection. Will you be protected by fire department, legal, in the labor group, or will you be protected under the law enforcement, legal, under their labor group, or maybe it's going to be under the city legal department as a whole. Whatever that is, needs to be clearly identified and captured. So let's talk about the testing process for a SWAT medic. Some of the elements to consider adding to that testing process. Obviously, one will be a medical scenario. That medical scenario should include the skill sets to treat an active threat injuries, punctures, penetrating wounds with gunshots, facial trauma, airway issues, tension pneumothorax, volume control. Some additional considerations for testing elements. A tactical element. Now, maybe as a SWAT medic, you are not initially tactically trained. However, consider adding the stress inoculation or a tactical element of the team moving into a position of cover and having that medic move with that team to that position of cover. How comfortable are they in that movement? How comfortable are they in that environment as a whole? Are they forward thinking? Are they acting in alignment with that team movement? Another element of a testing process, a physical fitness assessment, and something relevant to the role of a SWAT medic or that tactical medic position. So with a pack on their backs, with elevating multiple staircase, carrying a victim, carrying their medical equipment, something that is going to resonate or be very consistent with the physical expectations of a SWAT operator. So that physical fitness element, it should be different than your firefighter physical agility exam or your law enforcement physical agility exam potentially. A SWAT medic or that tactical function is very different than your everyday role as a firefighter paramedic or as a law enforcement officer. The testing environment should challenge the individual who's interested in being a part of this specialized team with those levels of physical fitness and physical exertion. Another element to the testing process would be a stress tolerance scenario, something that is going to challenge the normal, say, stress environment of a firefighter paramedic or a medic-minded individual. Tactical environments are obviously very different. They're very dynamic, and both levels of discipline, fire and law, both have high levels of stress. However, that tactical environment does pose very different, very unique stress situations, and an individual needs to be able to process and act appropriately and treat accordingly under those specific stress situations. And some of the resources that I shared earlier can help you design these kinds of tests. And the final piece to consider in a testing process is the interview. I think the interview should have a significant representation from law and that of fire or your EMS responding agency as well. Very different personality types, very different missions, and I think it's extremely important to find the right fit for your tactical team. And an interview gives the opportunity to find that fit. Another opportunity the interview process provides is for each interviewee to reach out to their fire department counterparts or their law enforcement counterparts or the EMS agency counterparts to find out more about this individual and if they are truly going to be a good fit for the team overall. Or possibly if this individual needs this SWAT badge to add to their already big list of medals. And is that the person you truly want to be a part of your team? So now that we've interviewed and we've tested for this individual, how do they integrate into the team as a whole? And what are some of the dynamics that already exist in the team? For this situation, let's talk about a firefighter from a city department becoming a part of the city police department SWAT team. A lot of organizations already work together pretty seamlessly, police and fire. Some do not. Some county organizations don't have the opportunity to work with their local fire or EMS agencies as much. But from the team dynamic standpoint, you have to evaluate, do they have the personality and fit to be a good paramedic? Most of that you hope to know prior to them being a part of the team. And maybe in the field, they're excellent paramedics. But in that tactical environment, that role does not suit their ability to be a paramedic. So here's an opportunity to evaluate that. Their personality for working with law enforcement. Very different personalities, but yet some real similarities. The desire to help, the desire to contribute, the desire to make better. But can you always have an individual personality that can blend well on both sides? This is an opportunity to evaluate those dynamics. And the most unique piece of the SWAT medic and their personality and their fit as a whole is, can they and are they capable of integrating with both those skill sets, with both of those mission focuses, if you will? Can they be that skilled paramedic and that skilled tactical operator? And can they blend those to the point that is going to be a significant investment and a significant contribution to that tactical team? Some other considerations is, even if an individual has been selected, it takes some time to understand that role and function in that tactical environment. And not everybody's cut out to do that. So some time with training and the response, preparing for the roles of that tactical team will help evaluate further if the individual is truly able to function in that environment, or if it's time to actually look for another individual that's going to have a more suited skill set and personality for the team as a whole. So just because an individual is the best paramedic on the street doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be the best paramedic in that tactical environment on that tactical team. And what I mean by the best field paramedic may not be the best tactical paramedic is, in the field as a paramedic, a lot of times you are directing, you are orchestrating that patient care. And at times you're taking direct action for a specific treatment. In that tactical environment, you are responding to the tactics that have been employed by this tactical team. So your ability to integrate with that level of operation is critical to the success of that team. In today's world, we have the opportunity to engage a lot of our previous military folks. Military folks have been hired in fire departments, in police departments. So considering those veterans as a part of your tactical team, I think is a great opportunity for us to capture some already existing levels of training as well as skills. Some organizations have a very close, very interoperable relationship, a seamless relationship between their police and fire department. Not every organization has that. I think that that can pose challenges pulling from your fire department for your medic position. But I also see that as an opportunity to bridge some of that gap that may exist in those relationships and to help that overall community service, both from police and fire, help that to gain more ground. Or to summarize, having that fire department medic as a part of your police tactical team can help forge those relationships to better serve your community. So the last discussion point, the training to build trust for that interoperability. Now, police, fire have had their differences over the years, but ultimately the core is to serve the community. And taking that fire department paramedic or that EMS paramedic, adding them to that tactical team, it's a little out of culture, if you will. To overcome that, the training together, training in frequently, builds that trust to provide that seamless interoperability. And for those to unfold and to realize, hey, this has been a valuable asset to our team, that we have a medic that is here that is going to take care of us as well as those that are injured. That's something that we do want as a part of our team. And you know what? Through our training, we've seen and we have continued to show that they can be a part of and a functioning member of our tactical team. And that interoperability is what makes that team that much more of a service to their community. Now, back to armed, defensively armed or not armed. No matter what you choose for your SWAT medic position, I think it is critical for that SWAT medic to know the weapons of the team. The long guns, the close quarter combat weapons, maybe your .40 caliber weapons, whatever munitions you use. So as they render care to a downed operator, they know how to render that weapon safe, secure that weapon, some of the uniquenesses potentially of that weapon. That's critical for that SWAT medic to have a solid understanding of making those weapons safe. Most tactical teams that have a SWAT medic, about half of those are defensively armed. We are seeing the trends increase to preparing more fully armed tactical medics. So let's talk about the training for a SWAT medic. Depending on the role of the SWAT medic in your organization, if they're going to be fully armed, defensively armed, or not armed at all, some of the training that is available, I think, is applicable for any of those roles. One of those roles is basic SWAT medic school. There are several basic SWAT medic schools or organizations that provide a basic SWAT medic school. So to evaluate which one is most fitting for your organization and the philosophy, something that needs to be considered. There's also advanced SWAT medic schools. And I would consider and also encourage armed, not armed, or defensively armed SWAT medics to take basic operator school to understand the functions, the roles, responsibilities, movements of your tactical operators. If that was something fitting for your SWAT medic specifically, I would also encourage that advanced SWAT operator school, again, to learn the philosophies, fundamental movements, and specifics of how your operators are moving. Another school of thought and teaching is the Tactical Emergency Combat Casualty Care, the TECC or the TCCC School of Thought. National Registry of Emergency Medical Technicians shares and delivers this philosophy. This concept was derived from the military's medical treatment protocols. It does fall in line with the injuries sustained from that active threat environment. So I would highly encourage that focus behind your tactical emergency medical training. So from a certification standpoint for a tactical medic, there are a multitude of organizations that offer different levels of tactical medic training. You will need to evaluate for yourself, for your team, the philosophy and goals of your organization for your role, which one of those will suit your needs the best. As it stands, there's no necessary gold standard from an organizational training standpoint, but again, trying to meet the needs from that TCCC or TECC philosophy. Any of those organizations that teach that concept, I think, would be reasonable to consider. So, last point of discussion, what's it going to cost? And that's going to vary, but some of the things and key points to consider underneath that cost. It's estimated about 8 to 10% of a tactical team's budget is spent on the tactical medic element. That being said, the development of a process will obviously take more funds up front with the time, the administrative time, your stakeholder meetings, those follow-up meetings, developing protocol, developing policy, writing job descriptions. There's staff time to commit to that. The medical director contract for service. That could be a significant expense if it is not paired to your existing fire service organization or your EMS response agency using their medical director. If you have to independently contract for service with that medical director, that could be a significant expense. Overtime costs for your call-outs, for your training, especially on that initial uptake to bring in an individual into a team. You'll have a lot of initial training based on the team's needs, based on the expectations. So that initial startup cost is going to be significantly more than your maintenance costs. Another cost is your equipment. So roughly about $4,000 estimated to equip a tactical medic. That is going to include your tactical gear, your uniforms, your ballistic protection, knee pads, arm pads, gloves, helmet, goggles, the same equipment your tactical team uses. The other piece is your medical equipment. What kind of medical bag are you going to utilize? What kind of specific treatment equipment are you going to carry? How is that going to be purchased? How are you going to equip not only your EMS bag, maybe your person? What are you going to carry and how are you going to carry that? There's going to be a cost incurred for that. Are you going to carry a weapon? There's going to be a cost to purchase that weapon, as well as the gear to carry that weapon. And then again, the training that it's going to take to bring on a new tactical operator. Like mentioned earlier, to bring a law enforcement officer, to give them paramedic level training, you're talking over 1,000 hours of classroom time, not to mention your clinical in the field time. So if that is a direction you choose to go, there's up to $10,000 to $12,000 for a paramedic level education and to become certified. Whereas a paramedic to a law enforcement certification can be through the Reserve Officer Law Enforcement Program or State Academy. That can vary in cost and have a much less time commitment. Further training can consist of your tactical training. So whether that is the basic SWAT school or basic SWAT medic school, the advanced SWAT schools or SWAT medic schools, as well as other team trainings, that can be between 100 to 120 hours of additional training. With that training comes potential overtime costs to attend that training or to backfill positions beyond what the initial level of training is going to be for your team. If you have a weapon that you carry defensively, or maybe it is the fully equipped operator, there will be a significant level of weapons training. Whether defensively equipped or not, there will be the level of weapons training for you to operate that weapon and show proficiency. Also, the level of training for the team weapons that they use and carry, so that you are familiar with those weapons to render them safe, to be able to secure those in the event that you need to treat one of your downed operators. So you can see there are several things to consider when building a tactical medic program. From my experience, some of the pitfalls that I've seen with a program moving forward is the lack of commitment from your executive team, the lack of follow through to that commitment. And what I mean is, as the development unfolds, sometimes expense is usually more than projected. The time commitment, both from the individual committing to that tactical medic role, as well as the time for the administrative oversight to put this program together. That time is beyond what was initially projected, if you will. Sometimes the training is more than initially expected. Not only the time, but the cost. And the roles and expectations are sometimes different. So as the program unfolds and the team develops with this integrated tactical medic, the value is with that team and with that role of that medic. However, without that support from your executive team on both sides, without that constant commitment to the training, to the role and function, to the continued development of that tactical team, it's bound to fail. And on that initial unveiling, that initial decision to move this tactical team forward with that SWAT medic role, to get to that level of functional interoperability, for it to unfold or unravel because of a lack of commitment, would be a tragic way to end such a worthwhile investment. But when your tactical medic saves their first life, it will all be worth it.